peaceful. It was an expression she'd never worn while she'd been alive. Ruby had never found her peace in this world, always moving with the chaos, creating it when she couldn't find any to latch onto. The quiet had always been too much for her inner demons to cope with. Perhaps now she was dead, they had set her free, and her weary soul could finally rest. He hoped so. Cillian's vision blurred, and the white marble swam before his eyes. He sniffed, looking away across the fields. The view was beautiful from this spot. It was why they'd chosen it. Fields and forest stretched out for miles, and the small village that the churchyard belonged to was tucked quietly away to one side. His mother, Lily, hadn't been able to bear her being buried in the city, where the bodies were all cramped together, surrounded by tall grey buildings and noisy, polluted roads. He hadn't pointed out the irony of moving her away, in death, from the exact environment they all chose to live in. He ran his thumb over the smooth surface of the bracelet he clutched inside his jacket pocket. It had been his last gift to his sister on her last living birthday. A gold Tiffany bracelet holding a single ruby. A ruby for his Ruby. It had been a particularly extravagant gift. But it had been for more than just her birthday, really. She had been trying so hard that year to earn her way back into the fold. It hadn't been easy for her, after years of choosing the needle over her family. But she had finally turned a corner. He had wanted her to know that he was proud of her, that he was rooting for her to succeed. The memories cut painfully deep. Today was going to be a difficult day for the whole family. Or most of them, at least. Lifting his chin, he clenched his chiselled jaw, and his gaze rested on the words etched into Ruby's gravestone. In memory of Ruby Ann Drew, beloved daughter, sister, and niece, sleep now, angel. There was no mention of a beloved cousin. A familiar feeling of unrest bubbled under the surface as he thought about Scarlet. There hadn't been much of an investigation into what had happened to Ruby. The oil tank had been in a large scrapyard, and her jacket and some bedding had been found nearby. She'd clearly been hiding out there, and the police had put it down to an unfortunate accident. Not that they cared. To them, Ruby was just another Drew, another criminal off their hands. But Cillian wasn't as convinced that it was an accident. There was a reason Ruby had been hiding out in that scrapyard. She and Scarlet had despised each other since childhood. They'd all assumed they'd grow out of it eventually, but instead it had grown into something much darker as they'd entered adulthood. This hadn't been much of an issue before Ruby had returned and joined the family firm, but in such close proximity, the burning embers of their mutual hatred had flared into a roaring fire. In the end, Ruby had committed one of the biggest sins imaginable in their way of life. She had set Scarlet up to be caught out by the police, aiming to get her sent to prison and ruin the life of Scarlet's then-boyfriend in the process. 2 vicious victories for the price of 1. But her plan hadn't worked out the way she'd hoped. Scarlet hadn't gone down, and Ruby's actions had been exposed. Scarlet's fury had turned murderous, and Ruby had disappeared, taking $250,000 from the family safe on her way out. Scarlet had tried to hunt her down, hell-bent on revenge, but to the rest of the family's knowledge, she'd never found Ruby. None of them had. Cillian had searched for her himself, but Ruby had always been skilled at hiding when she didn't want to be found. The next time any of them had seen her, she'd been on a mortuary slab. Cillian's thumb moved back and forth over the bracelet as he thought over it all. When Ruby was found, Scarlet had been adamant she'd had nothing to do with it. But something in the way she'd reacted was a little off. He'd accused her of